afternoon. It is 5:07. Currently,
not 5.
4:07. Calling the meeting to order. Pam, would you please note that Ms. Robles, myself, Judge Haggerty, and Ms. Solis are here. There's no one here for public comment? No? One? No? It's all yours, sir.
Chair Fierro, board members. We'll go ahead and get started. We have a pretty full session, so we'll start with the project update for all the projects on on Mission Del Paso. The notice to proceed we should complete on September 10th. On September 11th, we had our pre-construction meeting, and there was on October 2nd also an archaeological survey that it was determined there was nothing really in the site, so we can proceed along with the work.
What does nothing really mean?
Yeah.
Was there something there, we hit it, or?
No. They basically, based on the existing maps,
Okay.
historical maps and things like that, he goes through and makes an analysis of the site and see if there's any indication there was something there we shouldn't be touching. It's all visual. There's no subsurface radar or anything like that. And based on what he had available to him for the historical study, he determined that. By the way, they did do the same thing at Rio Grande. And the same determination, except that Rio Grande, it's going to be monitored because they came in a little late. And so they're under contract to come back and do recurring visits just to make sure. And we told them if something is found, obviously, we'll set it aside.
Is that for the recurring visits, is that because of the parking lot?
I don't believe it is. I'm pretty sure the main reason for that is because there was, at one time, there was part of an old neighborhood, and they just want to make sure that, I don't think the parking lot is, the area, yes. The area has to do with the historic neighborhood, so. And so as part of the contract with EPCC, they come here every now and then and double check. So the first OAC meeting is now scheduled for October 19, and we haven't even broke ground, and we're already 30 days late. So I think you're entitled to a pretty good explanation why that is. So right now we're talking about June, so we'll be the summer of 2020, and particularly since we're starting already 30 days behind. And here's a timeline of the reason why.
How does 30 days turn into 6 months?
Sir? Oh, no, that's the opening. You'll see, actually, I have a whole section here that I go into detail with the schedule, and you'll see exactly what I'm telling you. Because basically, they'll be done like in February. So the next school year is, the next little function will be summer, so that's why. And now I will go into a little more detail in a little while. When I get into the schedule for all the projects. But this is just a heads up, and since it was 30 days, I felt I really should get into a little more detail of why that is. So in September 10, like I told, there was notice to proceed, and then following that was the pre-construction meeting. On September 14th was the date pretty much that everybody determined, okay, this is when we finished moving all the folks from Flint, finished moving into town, and they were ready basically to start on September 17th. However, on September 14th, at the same time, the county required that the stormwater pollution prevention plan, pardon?
You got the wrong year up there, that's since 2011.
Oh, I do, don't I? I'm so sorry. Banking time. No, it's a little more than 30 days, I must tell you. I'm sorry, I'll have to fix that. Sorry about that. So the county required that the SWP3, which is the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, be updated to have the owner's signature as well as the contractor. So that took a little bit of time, but everybody got right on it, and on September 17th, we got that and turned it into the county. So the county received that, and it was basically in the process of issuing us the permit when we were informed on September 20th, actually it was late September 19th, that the County of El Paso was requiring that the water runoff included historical data runoff. To put it a little bit of perspective, typically with just any project, all the engineer needs to do for the civil drawings is to take into account retaining the water generated by that project. For instance, if you build a parking lot, now that's not dirt, it's not retaining the water, it's hard surface, so now you gotta take into consideration that you have to retain that water. In everything that the engineer has been, and myself included, experienced in the past, historical data, it's always considered historical data, so we're not modifying that, so we allow that to continue. Apparently in that site, and this is the whopper really, on that site, there's been a lot of issues with downstream water with the farmers, and also there's a lawsuit next door about that runoff. The problem is east of I-10, there's a lot of water comes down that way, and apparently that's been already been issued, discussed with the EPCC and the folks, local folks. So for lack of a better word, the county's paranoid about this. So they're now requiring that you literally retain all the water, including historical data. That is not the end of the world, but it did cause us to have to redesign the civil drawings. And of course, when that happens, you have to give the civil engineer some time to redesign, which took us about 2 weeks. So on October,
Which costs us more money, right?
Excuse me?
Which costs us more money?
No, they may ask for additional services. They haven't yet. I suspect they probably will because it requires some redesign, but it should be minimal. I'd say maybe $2,000-3,000 at most. So from that standpoint, the issue here, the problem is not so much money, it's really the time. And yes, actually, that's a very good question, because that's one thing I need to mention is because of the delay and because they had the superintendent already in town, we have to pay his salary. We kept on thinking, well, I'm going to start next week. So there's some general conditions. General conditions equals salaries and overhead and other things. And we negotiated with them, and we decided, okay, we'll pay for the salary, but that's it. And they agreed to it. On top of them, I had already talked them into giving us 10 additional days. So I brought that up, and they said fine. So by the time we're done, might be less than 30 days. But this is until we actually get going. Sure. And right now, the best estimate we have is that we'll get that tomorrow. As a matter of fact, I was on the phone on the way here trying to figure out if we had heard anything. But the county hasn't gotten back yet to the civil engineer. And assuming we'll get it tomorrow, they'll probably be mobilized by Friday and start probably a week from today.
Because the county doesn't work super duper fast.
No, they don't. And that's a little bit of part of the problem.
Right.
But unfortunately, but for this reason, that's a big reason why I'm proposing we go ahead and recommending actually that we forget about the spring semester, because the way it was before, the final completion of the project was mid-December. Okay, if you think about this.
You just brought something up, and maybe Ms. Holguin can follow up with Mr. Dunbar.
Yes, sir.
We traded some land with the Corps of Engineers for a ponding area that they were going to build. And they then in turn traded us for the land, Hotel Du property.
Uh-huh.
So where is the ponding area that the Corps of Engineers was supposed to be?
Unless it's on the site, it's not relevant, because we need to retain it on the building site. Does that make sense?
On the new building site?
Yes, not on the college side, on the building side, and that's part of the issue.
Then can we have our land back?
We want our money back. We want our money back.
And honestly, it's really not that hard. We just have to go a little deeper on the retaining ponds we have there. So it's not that hard, it just requires redesign. That's really the recalculations of the water flow and all that. That's really the issue. As far as cost, in terms of making it a little deeper, it's almost neglectable. But going back to Mrs. Solis, she had a good point about that, about the additional cost, and there'll be a little bit. However, we feel the big cost on this was really tiny. And like I was saying, is we're finishing the project in middle of December. Okay, middle of December, so we're already pushing it. And now, nobody works very much in December anyways, so we're
Well,
deciding.
you do if you wanna finish ahead of schedule and under budget.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we're 30 days in the hole already. But to be perfectly honest, that's not to say that we won't make a push for it. But I think it would behoove us to be prudent about this and say, okay, it's same thing on Northwest. As a matter of fact, I'll touch up on Northwest in a little bit. It would behoove us to say, okay, this is a little too risky. Let's be real, but with the knowledge that we still make the full-fledged effort to keep them on schedule. Because technically, they only have 30 days. So if nothing else happens between now and then, we'll be okay. But history would tell us that's probably very unlikely. That's really what.
Can you wine them and dine them or something?
We can try, but I don't know. So,
Before we move forward.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Labar, will this ponding area that they're referring to right now, or pond deal, whatever we're calling it, will that resolve the issue we have with the erosion on the property right now that's over there affecting that parking lot?
No, sir, that erosion is being caused by the development on the other side of the freeway. And we really don't have a problem on our side with the erosion. The erosion is occurring on the property that does not belong to us now. We're able to mitigate that by putting in a lot of the concrete and waste concrete. So we don't have a problem, it's on the other side right now.
So it's not affecting that corner parking lot that we have?
No, sir, not at all.
What's affecting it is if we go longer and it doesn't get done in time for the semester that is already planned.
We'll still try. I mean, I'm just saying from a standpoint of planning, we better just at least think in those terms so we won't be at the last minute rushing it. All you take, for instance, all it will take would be a good snowfall when we're trying to wrap up the parking lot at the end, and we would be in trouble. So the indication is we probably should take that into account. Now going to Northwest, that one is moving along pretty well. This is about a 14 feet difference right here. They started, as you can tell here, they started, this is 0 level, and they've gone up 14 feet here on the highest point. And so they're still 50% done with the fill material, but you can get an idea how much higher this is going to be. The rock wall excavation is about 35% right now. And we're in the process still, and I'll get into much more detail in a little while when we get to the action item about the city ordinance and obtaining the building permit. We'll go into much more detail on that. But to date, we're doing fine. We are recommending actually moving for the spring semester, and again, I'll go into a little more detail in the schedule, particularly because right now we would have the final move in mid of September, which is literally the middle of the fall semester, and that's just not pragmatic to do. So we recommended let's wait till spring, and I'll show you just a little while while he's telling you that. So right now, as you can tell, they're behind on billing considerably. But it's also just started, so it's a little deceptive at this point to say they're behind. Indications right now they're about maybe 3-4 days behind, so it's not too bad. The same thing here. You can tell it's even closer when you're looking at percentage complete planned and actual. The Rio Grande, it's moving along. This is another one. I hate this meeting because I'm going to tell you a lot about the delays, but it's the fact of construction. Is we actually are in pretty good shape everywhere else, but there's a corner of the site. And I've given you a heads up about this before, but now I know with more certainty because now we know the El Paso Electric now is on site. What we didn't know is that when they were going to get on site. And they were supposed, since June, we've been asking El Paso Electric the sign. On the corner of the site, there's this pole one that nobody else can remove but El Paso Electric. And they finally show up October 2nd, and they also need to work on the power for Little Temple. And unfortunately, the contractor got to a point where they just couldn't go any further. And the problem, not necessarily a problem, but it's part of the construction with the Rio Grande. This is very linear, so it's hard to get ahead on other things. And in this case, it was a pretty good delay. We're looking at approximately 40 calendar days. We're still looking at an opening of the fall 2020, yeah. And I'll go again into a little more detail along when we talk about the schedule. The big ones, obviously, these piers, and I like this picture because it gives you an idea of the scale of these things. They're about 6-7 feet wide. Most of them are 6 feet. There's some are 7 feet, and we're about 76% complete. We anticipate being done with that by the beginning of next week. So, and then we can start working on the grade beams. Like I told you, it's very linear. We can't do two things at the same time, unfortunately. 5,550 hours worked. No safety incidents. Now, yeah, oh yeah, and actually you'll see on Via Verde EPCC in Trans Mountain, which is up in ours, no accidents yet. So it's been outstanding. This is Via Verde, and as you can tell, there's a lot of work. They're working on weekends also. They are. This is a pour they had at 3 o'clock in the morning, and so it's very encouraging to see the progress despite the weather. This is actually. I wanted to show you some of these pictures to give you an idea of what the impact of weather is, and that's the same thing with Via Verde next door at Via Verde TPC. What happens, basically, you think, well, you had 2 days of rain, so you should give them 2 days. Unfortunately, that's not the way it works, because you have 2 days of rain, but you have 4 or 5 days of mud that you can't work on. And this is what we run in like Via Verde TTC. So Via Verde TTC right now, Via Verde right now, they've asked for 9 days extension of the weather. And of course, and you'll reflect that in the charts in just a minute, you'll see that you lose basically 25% of the production in 1 month. When you get to, so they asked for 9 days, they'll get 7 because 2 were already per specification they already is supposed to be allocated for that. And on Via Verde, when I get there in a minute too, you'll see was kind of similar to they asked for 7, they got 5. But that's unfortunately that's the problem about that weather, particularly when they're focusing on work outside. Now, probably things will get better when you get the building to dry. Getting the building dry is basically when the skin of the building is all hermetically sealed, and you can work inside. If it rains, it doesn't affect you. It'll still affect you, like if you're putting the stucco up or brick up outside. But as far as interior construction, you can progress. But right now, as you can tell, we're at the mercy of the weather.
And you know it's going to be raining Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I mean, it's going to be bright.
You just busted a bubble.
I'm sorry. I like to be realistic.
I had to look at the.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But no, I certainly, and that's unfortunately that's part of the issue. Now we do expect the contractors to do have a recovery schedule to catch up.
Okay.
But that being said, you can't just go 5 for 5 days.
Yeah, I know.
But in either way, at least I'm very thankful that we have very good contractors. So.
All right. We'll end on that note.
Pardon?
We'll end on that note. It's positive.
That's right.
Not the weather.
So as far as you can tell, they're already, actually this is a middle of September picture. They've actually poured this slab. The spot footings are nearly complete. They're 98% complete. The grade beams are 50%. Matthew Perry's Emporium is now connected, which is a big deal. And the utilities, most of them have been issued, the applications and the permits received. Safety, 10,081 hours, no incidents, which is very good as well. This one is right on schedule, like I told you. Formally, they just submitted the letter today for the 7 extra days, but it's right on track. It's going very well, despite all that mud you saw a minute ago. As far as as you can tell, there's a little bleak here, it's going a little down. That also has to do with the fact that as things come in, they're more expensive, this will start reversing a little bit. Like for example, when you start seeing like the air handling units and big ticket items, they're expensive. When those come in, that's a big invoice, so obviously they will catch up a little bit as well. But we are a little bit behind here on billings, and fire TPC will see the same thing. But it's honestly, it's not that bad. We're talking about here in this case about 3%. The Vibrant TPCs progressing on. Actually, and I told Dr. Serrata in the cabinet last time, this is the stuff I love about my job, is when you actually start seeing things come to fruition. Now, this is what the students are going to be using, things already start shaping up. I think this is wonderful. As far as, like I've told you before, they divide in different areas. And right now, on the wash area is complete. They're completely done with that. The classroom area, as you can tell, a lot of classroom decking is complete, safety cable is complete. Duct work is already at 15%. This is the HVAC duct. And on the diesel lab, columns and beams, joists, and concrete slab is all done. Automotive lab, the metal frame for the interior is almost complete, and the roof curves, duct work is 50%. So it's very positive to see the progress. And again, we have a very good contractor in this project as well.
And what's the gold triangle?
The gold triangle is the substantial completion. It's
Substantial, that's when we want it substantially completed?
by contract. This here is the contract date. In other words, it's when by contract, now substantial complete, I believe so just in case, substantial complete is when they say, okay, we're done, now you can start moving in, but within the next 30 days, we're still gonna go, like if there's a nick in the door.
Punch list,
punch
yeah.
list. Exactly, yeah. So there's still 30 days after that. But you'll see in just a minute when I get into the schedule that given our new approach to where the schedule is, we have 30 days buffer in all the projects, which is quite good, at a minimum. So, as you can tell, this one is even more than that. Now, that being said, of course, we have to bump in a little more the schedule, but this already takes into account, if you recall, the entrance, which was 30 days, and then we have 14 days. So this is already counts into account 44 days that they already been granted to them by contract. So I think we're in pretty good shape, and they're moving right along. They're moving. They're an outstanding contractor.
How often do you go to each site?
I'm sorry?
How often do you go to each site?
Oh, no, it's not like, but I try to go at least once a week.
Okay.
Yeah, I try to, we have, like ECM, as individuals, they're there every day. Their office is there.
And they report back to you?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I do that?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. They do.
So you're saying your boss doesn't allow you time to go visit the sites? That's what I heard.
Oh, no, I'm fine. I'm just a slacker. He gives me plenty of time.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Oh, you want to get me in trouble?
All right, moving right along.
All right, yeah. Should you look at that? So here, as you can tell, there's also a different as well, the buildings. And here, but again, within, I would say within the next 2 months, I won't even say a month. 2 months, you're gonna start seeing this starting to turn back that way. Unless we have all that bad rain. That is always an issue. So, and Trans Mountain, it's looking fantastic. It's really moving right along. Here's a picture of the inside. You actually start seeing the spaces. And the structural steel is at 70%. That's outstanding. The CMU walls, it's complete masonry units. Go off to those are at 90%. So it's making quite, and look at the hours, Dr. Graham. I mean, that's really good.
Excellent.
So we're pretty proud of that. And here's the buildings. They are considerably behind in the buildings. Again, we feel a lot of these things is the big ticket items they haven't been voiced for. And the same thing. Usually these two, this chart and this one kind of confirm each other. It's almost like a belts and suspenders kind of thing. Here's the schedule. And I want to just give you an idea more or less where we are right now. These are the actual dates, contractual dates here. So basically what we're talking about is this is when we're thinking, or we're estimating that we're going to be complete. For example, Trans Mountain Viaduct EPCC, they will be complete, substantial completion in April, and they'll move in July. Northwest in September, Valle Verde in November, they'll move in the spring. Mission Del Paso will be in February, they'll move in June, and Rio Grande will be July. Now this is going to slide. This doesn't reflect the 40 days yet because we're not sure, we're not quite done yet with the impact of El Paso Land. So that might still change a little bit. So that might bump us into here. Does make us a little bit nervous from the standpoint there's a 30-day cushion that we had in all the projects. But we're still pretty confident that we should be able to hit the fall semester. But of course, it's still a little bit early to tell.
Where's Northwest? I'm sorry, I didn't see Northwest.
Northwest is right here.
So everything happens, they finish and you move in?
By contract, right now, Northwest, the final completion is 9/17.
And
So it's
move in?
the final completion, so they would move in 9/17. So basically, they're already missing the fall semester.
Oh.
And then if you take into account that this is assuming that we have no extensions between now and then, I think it's fairly unrealistic. So we figure we better start advertising it as being for the spring of 2020. And so this is really, I think ultimately this is what you're the most interested with, which is
What's the 80-day delay?
the 80 days delay.
The Trans-Mountain?
Oh, that's, if you recall, remember that's those 2 months about, remember from way back when? We've negotiated, they actually asked for a lot more, but we negotiated with them, we got them down to a completion date that's March 23rd, the original date was January 2nd. So they wanted to go until June or something, it was just something crazy, but we kind of came together. That's why it has taken so long to establish that date, because we've been going back and forth with it.
And then the 44, the same
The
thing?
44 is what I was thinking about, actually, about Valle Verde TTC. Remember, there were 30 days for the entrance, and then 14 days for that temporary line, and so that's that. The only time extension I'm aware of right now, they're out there yet, is the days for Rio Grande, is the weather days for Valle Verde TTC, and weather days for Valle Verde, as far as we've been made aware of. So this ultimately, this is, I think, what's ultimately concerns, when will the students start using the building? And so Trans Mountain Valle Verde DPC again will be summer, Valle Verde Northwest will be spring, Mission will be summer 1, and Rio Grande fall 2020.
But if the weather cooperates, there's a possibility it will be earlier than those dates?
Absolutely. I mean, we keep, so we all know, from a management standpoint, we keep telling, okay, this is the contractual, so they have, and just to put that in mind, your mind at ease a little bit, when dates folks come in and say, hey, we need extra 20 days, and this happens quite a bit. They say, okay, we have a change order that we didn't anticipate. Let's say we need different door frames. Okay, it's going to be 20 days. Just because they're saying 20 days and say, okay, fine, we'll give you 20 days, they have to show clips actually from their schedule, their working schedule, that shows how that actually impacts the critical path. Because what they're doing doesn't affect that critical path. They don't get any days.
Right.
And this is actually, that's been a little bit of a struggle we've had with contractors, because any change order, they want time. They say, well, unless you show us that it actually is going to critically affect you, you're not entitled to the time. Some contractors are better than others, but overall, that's how we enforce it. And it's by contract.
The architect has to agree. The architect.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So, I guess you're paying for terms of checks and balances. Yeah, absolutely. So this is where we are now. I'm going to give you a quick overall bond update. And Ms. Chauncey will give us a little bit of an update as well as far as the balances for the bond itself. So this is our working sheets for each project we have. it shows, you can at a glance, you can see in terms of change orders, for example, on Via Verde Classroom Lab, we've had $25,000 of change orders. We can, if you look, for example, down there, contingency construction, so 974, we're doing really good. So out of 974,000, we've only spent $25,000. So, this is typical for all of the projects. Then, we can go to the overall project budget, which gives you basically the same information we had before, but in addition to that adds the IT funding and the computer funding, and he still keeps track of the contingencies. And if you recall, this year looks like a mistake. I don't know what happened here. It's not 0%, it's 5%. So, yes, ma'am.
Oh, so on the Mission El Paso, where you talked about we were gonna have to pay a little extra money for because the
Oh,
contract.
we rich you should know.
But I'm just, does that come out of, since it wasn't
Construction
budgeted?
contingency.
Okay.
So basically, what these contingencies, and actually EPCC doesn't separate them. I just like from a project management standpoint, I like to separate them.
Uh-huh.
Which basically what it is the construction contingency is what you use to fund any changes in construction.
Right.
The project contingency is for everything else, like if commissioning was more money, Joteg was more money, the architect needs more money, they never need any more money. Then that's where you would go get the funding from.
Okay.
So, that being said, all the, and I again, I apologize for that, I checked this on my, it looks like 0%, but it's 5%.
It says 6.
Oh, 6? Oh, okay. I can't read real well. So we get old. But so that's good, then it's correct. That's correct. So, this basically gives you a global view of all the projects. Then, furthermore, we have the bond funding itself, and if you notice, this number here equals that number here. In other words, that 117,950 is all the funding from these lines here. From here.
So that's how much we will have paid.
When we're done,
Right.
that's how much we have allocated, including budget. How much let me put it, better way to put it is, it's how much we have budgeted.
Okay.
So right now, this is where we are, and the balance to the 125,200 is the expenditure allowance, district-wide, IT, computers we find, and land acquisition.
Oh, I gotcha.
So the ideal thing, then here's a breakdown for the source of funds, and obviously the idea is this number always has to be 0. Actually, I keep this all the time in my budget, because anytime I change, the first thing I can is look at that. If that number changed, I made a mistake, because it needs to be 0. So that's all I have for budgets, but Ms. Johnson,
So internally, so you hear Mr. Perez, you're talking about the budget, and if you notice though, he does not give you, he just keeps track of the budget and make sure based on the construction, based on the contracts with the contractors, he keeps track of the budget that way. Internally, we keep track of all expenditures related to those. So I just wanted to give you a very preliminary report as of the end of August, what internally we are doing to keep track of those expenses. And the bond covenant requires that we keep track of the expenses. The IRS requires that we keep track of the expenses. We keep all documentation behind those expenses. But just to let you know that we meet with Mr. Perez on a regular basis to review the numbers. And so make sure that we match. And anytime there is movement, because internally, accounting-wise, we have several funds that keep track of the various expenditures. Some of those expenditures are capitalized and some of those expenditures are not capitalized. So just wanted to give you a quick, this is not the Bible, but close to the Bible. It is preliminary. Juanita Antunes, our accountant, keeps track of all expenditures for these bonds. And don't forget, it's not even just bond money, there's also internal money. Remember, we did allocate some funds from the sale of Stanton. We allocated some money from the Project Reserve Fund to supplement what could not be funded by the bond, because we had so much for the bonds and then so much that we needed to add to it. So you may not have everything.
Ms. Chauncey, do we allocate all those funds from the sale of Stanton and we've already allocated?
Everything is allocated, yes.
So
So
we
this
don't
is
have
just to
any
give
money
you an idea of how much detail is behind, yeah. Does everybody have one?
I don't think you
Mr.
answered, Mr. Fiala's question.
I think she ignored me on purpose.
No, no, sir. I may have ignored you, but it was not on purpose. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, no, I was just asking if we had any extra money.
Any extra money?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Extra
So,
ones.
from-
At this point, we don't have any extra money. We won't know until everything is closer to completion. The other thing is because we allocated $2 million in bond interest. To date, we are over the $2 million.
We are over.
So the good news is that we'd
Not
like
for
to
long.
reimburse maybe some of the fund that we allocated to supplement those projects. And the bond covenant does allow us to do that.
Got
There's
the
no
interest
certain-
on that money, we made more money?
I'm sorry?
The interest on the money?
So the interest, we allocated about $2 million. Based on our spend down schedule, we figured, okay, 1.11% of our total bonds as they were expended, because we had to give that spend down schedule to, when we did the flex repo, when we invested the money, and that's about 1.11%. So we estimated more or less $2 million, where we have not spent down the money as quickly. Therefore, that money remains in the flex repo, it is not withdrawn. If we don't spend the money, we cannot withdraw that money, by the way. So it doesn't matter how much money we make on the outside, because now it is past 1.11%. It's about 2% that we can make. But we cannot just withdraw the money if we don't spend it on those projects. So in the meantime, it is accumulating that interest, and that interest now is at the end of August, $2.1 million. So that means we'll probably make $3 million over the life of those projects while they are being constructed. So yeah, a little extra money.
Yes.
But we're not counting on it.
We're not gonna tell Mr. Fiala.
Yeah.
But
Don't invest in
ever
international
spending.
anything.
So I just want to show you what is being done internally. We keep track very, very closely, and we meet with ECM on at least once a month to review all the expenses versus the budget. And Mr. Perez deals with Juanita in terms of, anytime that we need to do some reallocation of budgets. Because, the budgets are the budgets. The actual could be a little bit different. So, but we are not overexpending, okay? I'm just letting you know we're not overexpending. Yes, ma'am?
Is there a reason why some of these are coming?
Some of it is for Juanita to
Oh.
remind herself that she has a question for Mr.
Okay.
Perez. Yeah. This is still preliminary, but she insisted on having this ready for this meeting in spite of all the different things we're doing with closing. We are in the process of closing the fiscal year, and that will be done probably by the end of this week. So she's still very busy with that. But I just want to give you an idea what is it that we are doing internally to keep track of those expenses.
It's very impressive.
Well, thank you. She deserves a lot of credit for all of this. And then what I'm going to give you is a summary sheet of all the projects, and then the percentage expended, the percentage to the budget that is expended, to date. So you'll be getting that report on a monthly basis.
very detailed, thank you. Ms. Chauncey.
So we'll know, just to kind of piggyback off what you were saying, we're very, very carefully watching the expenditures on those contingencies. It is our hope that we be able to return some of those funds at the end. So we're very.
And what we would suggest that if there is some extra money from contingency to be returned to the college, and it goes back to reimburse those expenses that were funded by internal funds. So then it can be allocated for other things. We want to use the bond money as much as possible for all this. We want all the bond money to be expended by the time that we are done in 2020.
So going on now to the action item, which is the rezoning of the Northwest Campus. And this is related to the building, what I've been telling you earlier about getting the building permit for the Northwest Campus. So what we're talking about, this is the area we're talking about. This is the Canada High School. This is I-10 here in Trans Mountain. and this is the northwest campus, and this is the boundaries of the northwest campus. So right now, the city has this area, yellow is a residential zone. And they are encouraging the campus, not the campus, the college, to turn it into a C1 commercial zoning, which would be more appropriate for
Why wasn't that done when we built it?
and that's what everybody's wondering to be
Yeah, we
honest.
were on the board at the
Yeah.
time.
Oh,
No, I wasn't. RSSP, what is that? What's this mean, special? Special permit. That's how you gotta run it?
Residential
They made it
Special permit.
residential.
Special, no, this one doesn't even have an SP on it, it just has a R.
I've never heard of RSSP.
Yeah, well, that's what the map says. I mean, but basically, it's a, Jerry, this is Jerry's, I'm gonna ask him to speak in just a little while, but he's the zoning expert here.
I think it did have a special permit, the special permit where you had to go through the detailed site plan every single time to see what you were doing. That's the purpose of that special.
I mean, we've done a lot of construction out there, how come they didn't require it before?
No,
Actually, we
actually,
put in daycare, and we had.
no, every single time I was part involved in most of the projects there, and we did have to submit the detailed site plans to the city.
I know, but they didn't require commercial then.
I think really at that point, it was really never brought up. I think now, and we'll explain a little bit more.
Yeah, well, and Jerry, do you want to continue? Yeah, no, that's fine, yeah.
So they're gonna do it for free? I mean, I don't understand, how did they require?
Okay,
If
here's
they
the
didn't require
request for
it, we built it,
rezoning.
why
Yeah, I was
require
quite
it?
good. So basically, this what Jerry was just talking about was the detailed site plan requirement. So every time we do any construction, if you recall, we're also planning to have an expansion on 2020.
Yeah.
And so we'll have to do the whole process. It's not only very time consuming, there's a lot of traps involved with it. And if we have the commercial, the C1, then we get rid of all those requirements. So that's a big advantage of going to commercial one. You're not buying what I'm saying, are you?
Well, I don't buy it, I don't understand if they allowed us to build on there before.
Well, and I'll get you to that.
I
Actually,
don't,
Jerry,
I
will
don't
get up.
understand how they can come back and tell you gotta do all this stuff.
Well,
No,
this
what he's
was
saying
basic-
is that every time that we have something we wanna construct, we're gonna have to go through this process instead of just getting it all approved and then we can do whatever we
And my
have.
question is why wasn't
And my question is, you tell us, because you were on the board.
it, I told you I was not, when they bought Northwest, I was not on the board.
I thought you.
I know you think I've been here forever, but I.
Second?
Let me tell you what triggered this particular instance. The reason the red flags went up was parking. Because in the past, all the work we've done, it didn't affect requiring additional parking. And this time it did. And so when that happened, they start digging through all their records and they found this ordinance that Jerry will tell us all about it. That basically, they're putting us between a rock and a hard place. They're
Just to
saying,
get more money out of us.
well, and not so much that, it's just, I think it's to put everything in order. To put it as commercial where it should have been to be.
CYA.
Yeah. He said that.
But it's not a bad thing.
No, it's not. It's not. As a matter of fact, as you can tell, it adds value to the land as well.
And it's
You'll
not
make-
gonna delay us.
No, on the contrary. On the contrary, because we don't have C1, for a lack of a better term, we're being held hostage.
What do
I
we
mean-
have right now? What's our zoning now?
Excuse me?
What's our
Harvest,
zoning?
harvest. And,
So it will add value to the land.
yes, ma'am. And you get rid of all the headaches in the future for this here.
So it's what we should have been all along, but we just never did it. Or it wasn't.
It never, yeah. So that's the way they established to begin with, and now it's
So
just.
now,
But now, because now all of a sudden they're issued with parking, and Jerry will get into that, that there's issue with parking, and that's what triggered all this, because then they started to dig it, what about parking now? They wanted, because if you remember, this area takes a lot of parking. And so once that happened, the city, wait a minute, let's see what happens. And now that's my little experience here. He's the architect of the project.
Chair Gutierrez, I'm gonna explain to you kind of what went on, and I think it was kind of like an agreement. It was really a friendly agreement between the college and the high school or the school district. Okay, what started off when 2014, 2004, that's when the high school was ready to start building. They came and I guess they went to the city ready with a permit, and they basically told them, no, you do not meet your parking requirements. And what they were using as their parking requirements were the stadium parking requirements, which basically, when you do a stadium, there's a number, and what they did is use those, and those required was 1,875 parking spaces.
But do they have a stadium there?
There's a stadium, but honestly, when you do, the stadium is an accessory to the school, okay? Accessory to the school, so at this point, you're supposed to be using the parking count for the school, not for the stadium. For the school, only for the school, at that time, it was, let's say it was close to 500, and I'm just gonna round up to 600 parking spaces, which at that point, it would have been okay, but for some reason, they were forced that they needed to be 1875. Am I kind of clear to that? So, when they went there, they basically, you do not have parking spaces. So at that point, somehow they looked around and said, hey, community college, can you help us with providing parking spaces? And for me, the college pretty much said, yeah, we'll be friendly, we'll be a community, we'll help you on those parking counts. So at that point, this ordinance basically states that the college needs to provide 654 parking spaces. Okay?
So Cranitio's gonna pay for this?
No, for right now, that was that ordinance that basically the college was in a hook for those parking spaces. Okay, I don't think, and for me, it's an interpretation that was created that somehow the city said, no, that the college needs to always have 654 parking spaces for kind of deal. Okay, so after doing some research.
Did they give us donate land or something?
No, it was just, it was done honestly as a goodwill kind of neighborly community college and partnership between both of them. That's how I feel. I think anybody who was in those two, from Canutillo board to your board, was, hey, let's be friends. True? Okay. So at this point, now that we are trying to come in with a new building, we're deleting parking spaces, okay? By deleting parking spaces, that's where it triggered, then, hey, you are no longer in compliance to that particular ordinance, okay? So at this point, this is where we say, city, that's our interpretation of the way this ordinance reads different.
So why point is C1 gonna change all that?
Okay, and with that, these are the recommendations that they're saying, I think you should do that.
Who's they?
They as a city.
Oh.
Okay, so before we kind of continue, the best thing to do is to rescind that particular ordinance. Okay, by rescinding it is by going back and saying, Canutillo, as of last month, Canutillo has already agreed to rescinding that particular ordinance. And by doing that is because what we did is we showed the document to the city that as of today's time, they meet their parking counts. Not using stadium, it's using the school as the main parking count, which basically would be the 500 and something parking spaces. Currently, they have the 748 parking spaces, okay? So at this point, we as the college, we do not need to be on that hook for those 654 spaces. So that's part of the intent of having to rescind this particular ordinance. By doing that is you get your parking spaces back and you can do anything you want to And that's kind of what we're trying to do with this rezoning. So they asked us, I think this is the best time, now that you're going through the rescinding process, it's best that you consider going through the rezoning, because it's gonna take the same process, of time, you know?
You
It's gonna
can
take,
do them both at the same time?
by doing that, you do both at the same time, because for what matters of the rescinding, it's not really the college that matters, it was kind of deal that really needed to. But you are just saying, yeah, we agree. I mean, it's kind of crazy not to say we agree with it, because it's your parking spaces. Right now, you're kind of held by those parking spaces. Might kind of make sense?
So what's the land zone at Cantillo High School?
They're at R. If you notice right now, that whole thing was an R.
It's
because
residential.
It's residential.
I know, so
No,
see, this is,
no, let me explain. In a school, a K-12, you can be into a residential. You are a business. A college is a business. That's why you're in a business, which when,
So how did they do all this back in 1988?
I was part involved in that time. To be honest, I think it was really, at that point, it was
Dr. Sheet
That-
back in Jonathan Ross?
But through time, it's just becoming, every single time that we had to submit, like say for when we did the early college and we did Region 19, I wasn't part of the two buildings that were done, which is the library and the educational, but at that point, it was not a big deal, because you were not adding parking spaces or reducing parking spaces.
And they're not required, when we were building those buildings, you weren't requiring us to provide more parking spaces.
Correct, because you already had enough. Second, they were, every single time, those individuals, even including myself, we were having to provide a detailed site plan of what we were doing, to making sure that the master plan was still working the way it was supposed to.
So what's the cost of this guy?
The cost right now, basically I really don't know the cost. I know that the intent is to be able to start introducing these, creating the application and submit this so we can continue with the project.
But it's a minimal amount.
I would assume so. I mean, it's just an application. You know, because if not, you still have to go through the rescinding, or you leave it at the R1 or R3, whatever we have, and it's still gonna take the same process. The only thing is, like you mentioned earlier, you get rid of all these headaches where every single time you're having to ask permission
So are we gonna have a figure next time we meet, or we're gonna even?
No, we're gonna make a
they want us to
decision
know
now.
now.
We're gonna make a decision.
Without knowing the prices?
yes, well,
It's gonna
it's
end up
a
being
It's
a
a
difference.
required to check whatever they say.
I
it's
doubt
a,
that it'll be that much, though.
Well, I mean, it's not, we really don't have a choice. We're gonna do it now or do it in 2020.
If we didn't do it now, then you'd be like, how come you didn't tell us that we should be doing it, back then, when we had the opportunity and we were going on forward with rezoning anyway.
Do we have a motion?
oh, okay, yeah, let
And I'll
me
just
show you
wait, exactly.
here's the action item.
I make a motion that ECM International's program manager for the master plan 2016 bond program, that we direct the president to authorize ECM and EPCC staff to formally approve for rezoning of the Northwest Campus property from R3 SP to C1, and to direct ECM and the project architect to initiate a rezoning process with the city of El Paso.
Second.
Thank you. Just one additional comment.
That call vote.
All in favor?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Anybody opposed?
Maybe.
One.
Wait, did he say no?
Yes.
Yes.
He opposed.
He said me, but that's a no.
That's a no.
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 Motion passes. Yes, Mr. Prince?
No, what I was gonna tell you is, at the next board meeting in November, I'm gonna be bringing that memorandum of understanding. The attorneys right now for El Paso Community College are looking at the draft, and then they'll be sent to Canutillo. Canutillo will review it. After their approval, then I'll bring it to you for your approval. So that's to be anticipated for the next.
And just to clarify, I know we've already voted, but say we didn't wanna do the C, the commercial zoning, we would still have to renew, or
Well,
what would we
the
do since we're
big.
taking the 600 and some odd parking spots for our.
Well, yeah, and the big deal about that is that, like I said earlier, they're holding us hostage. The big deal is that they wouldn't give us the permit,
Who's
and we,
they?
the city, so then we wouldn't be
Oh,
able
because we
to.
needed to have it. Oh, okay.
Now, and the city's not gonna give us a permit until both parties sign
Yeah,
on
because
the
there's,
MOU.
it's
My
not,
understanding now, Jerry and I have not absolutely eye to eye on that, but my understanding is after we get your approval today, in 2 days, we'll submit to the city for C1. At the time, we really gonna try very hard to get the building permit, period. There's some indication they'll give us an interim permit until we get that agreement executed by the board. But our hope, go ahead, Jerry, go ahead. Our hope is that we will be able to get a building permit then.
The only reason I bring that up is because I don't think they're as responsive as they could be.
I agree.
And it took them, what, 6 weeks to put this on their agenda for the MOU?
Which we agree with you, but I think the city's waiting, wanting to kind of get a commitment from the college and the high school, or the district, the kind of good district. Because the good district gave them that something on writing. Now they need it from your side. And I think by doing that, they said, look, we're committed. We're not going nowhere. We need to continue with our building. They need to provide us. But I think once we have created this document, the application, whatever we need to provide them, then let's move forward. And we need to kind of, we're gonna have to push them a little bit faster.
Move this along.
Yes, exactly. Because again, some of the stuff is, it's an interpretation that I don't think that all four parties had something trying to say, I'm gonna try to beat this. Everybody was doing it in good faith.
Who's the fourth party?
No, I'm sorry, the three parties. The three parties. The city, the college, and the district.
Yeah, and the only part getting the shaft is the college.
So I have a couple of questions. I'm glad, thank you, Board, for moving forward with Lord. I do have a couple of questions that I think are pertinent to the board. So before we started construction, approximate, I expect, how many parking spaces did we have at One West?
Before we started, I think it was about 1,200.
Right now we have 1,028.
After the construction began?
After this,
So we still have 1,028 after construction, okay. So my question, and in particular for the board, I'm sure everyone saw the announcement, so two things. Canatillo, I'm looking at Google Earth at the respective areas, and I'm blown away that, so we think, I guess, when we go all the way around the school, they have 700 or so spaces, and they need 1,200 for the stadium, there you go, you and I are looking at the same thing. Then they need 1,200 for the stadium, so that's when they use the runoff, and quite frankly, on Friday nights, I don't really mind being a good partner. However, now that we've taken those approximately 200 spots for the new building, and now that this is where we come into an interesting dynamic. On the weekends, on Saturdays in particular, those soccer fields are highly utilized. And I see that the city, first off, this is City of El Paso, even though Canatillo High School is, I guess, actually technically located in El Paso. Interesting. That tiny space is what the city allocated for parking for those fields. No, left.
Down in the corner.
Left, right in the middle of the park, right there.
Right there?
No,
No.
Just right there. All right.
right there, right. They're using about 500 of our spaces on Saturdays. And so our students don't have anywhere to park for Saturday classes. So now I do have an issue. And so do we have a written agreement with the city that we will share?
We
Remind
do
me
have
of
a
the
written
spots?
agreement, sir, and that they are only allowed to use 400 spaces.
Okay.
But if we have 1,000 spaces, they're using 500?
No, they're using more apparently, because what's happening is I have faculty letting me know that their students have nowhere to park on Saturdays, and they've actually given me pictures showing students parking illegally because they cannot park because the soccer fields are using all of our parking.
So that goes back to the chief, and you guys start giving.
No, and Chief already agreed that and Mr. Lobato too, I just want the board to be aware, because then to make the matters more interesting, everyone saw the announcement of the El Paso Locomotive, the new professional soccer team that's coming to El Paso. That's where they're gonna practice.
oh boy.
Wow.
So our properties just don't
How
know.
much-
Well, but they're only gonna practice there for a year until they build the newspapers.
Yeah, but I don't.
And so we strong
But I
this
think that
property
this
in
is
town.
gonna be their practice for it, so
Right.
they're adding money, so to say they're gonna move, they won't move, I think, like anything else.
Oh, you say they're gonna practice there long
This is
term.
practice, but I think they'll keep, eventually, whenever they make their stadium.
So why don't you bring that up to the city and say just own C1 on it, and we'll call it even.
Well, I think, I wish we could, but the biggest issue that we're dealing with is that 654 that we need to rescind that, get rid of. Once we get rid of, it's really your parking spaces.
You just write a piece of paper, say you're rid of it.
I agree, I wish, we've been trying to do that,
But the other thing is
It's
that
the conundrum with the city, as always.
once you get an arrangement going, don't let this board hold up the progress on getting it done. If we have to have a special meeting or something just to get it out of the way, let's do it, because otherwise we wait until another board meeting and we
Wait
might
a
not
whole month.
have one and we don't want that to happen. Nothing that, you cannot use anything as an excuse for not delivering ahead of schedule.
And thank you for mentioning that. Actually, that's an excellent point, because if we get there to the city, say on Wednesday, turn in all this in and says, no, we won't give you the permit, or until you get, say, that memorandum, then yeah, we probably would certainly appreciate
Yeah, because all we
you
need
just
is four of us and, Mr. Pierre can schedule something quick so we can move the paperwork forward.
Thank you.
And I think that's what we're trying to do, let's say come, whenever we submit this application, we're gonna say pretty much that with this rezoning, the college is agreeing to this rescinding, because we need to do that. I know that eventually it's gonna go through board approval, but I think for us, we need to move a little bit faster.
Yeah, Dr. Naka, can you direct, Zubal and, what's the chief?
I already did.
Okay,
They're already
come up
on
with
it,
a
I
plan.
just wanted the board to be aware, both of them are.
And somehow designate for visitors on, visitors
The chief
area?
has a plan.
Okay, all right.
I just wanted the board to be aware. We're already moving forward, but the faculty was very quick to let us know of the issues they're dealing with.
How long's that been going on?
Huh?
How long has that been?
Since the
going
semester started,
on? Oh, okay.
this semester. And it was because
They had
it
some-
wasn't an issue until we started building and took approximately 200 spots.
All goes back to parking spots.
Even if
All
you drive out that way on the weekend, they're parking all up and down the road on Donovan, and then on the street that goes up to the campuses and stuff, they're just like.
And we're charging
behind
those
us.
students for parking, right? We are. Maybe we should raise their parking
I
and.
think we should charge the soccer player.
I think so, I think that's a good idea.
All right,
Set the
is that
cost
it?
of our C1 zone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
When's our next meeting?
It's
November the 15th, I believe.
It's another Monday, right?
Another Monday.
Monday the 15th, I believe.
How did you know?
19th.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, wrong date.
The 19th.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, 19th. Sorry.
I was off too.
Oh, why? I thought it was the same day.
I did too. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Pam has food ready, oh, I'm sorry, it's 5:10?
Are we doing executive now? Or?
No, well, it's 5:10-ish,
What time is the meeting?
it's,
5:30.
business meeting. Pam has food.
It's all set
We're
up.
adjourning this meeting at 5:12, 5:10.
Okay. Motion, everybody in favor of adjourning?
Yes.
Aye.
We have 20 minutes, Pam has food, the other group.